OPB Podcasts.
From the Gert Boyle studio, it's OPB Politics Now for Thursday, June 25th. The Moda Center has a packed summer lineup with performances by Chance the Rapper, Benson Boone, and there's going to be some monster truck fun as well. And the arena is no longer devoid of basketball either in the summer, thanks to the triumphant return of the Portland Fire. But this week, the building is taking center stage for other reasons. Portland Trailblazers owner Tom Dundon is in town for an annual business summit at Moda Center. Meanwhile, city council and county leaders discussed the plan to renovate the arena with public cash, and there was a little bit of spiciness. We will discuss. Welcome to the podcast. I'm OPB Politics reporter Lauren Dake.
I'm Portland City Government reporter Alex Zielinski.
And I'm business reporter Kyra Buckley.
Thank you guys for joining me. Kyra, let's start with you. You have been inside the Moda Center many times recently for fire games, but yesterday you were there for a different reason, an annual event for the city's Chamber of Commerce. Set the scene for us.
Yeah, it was a little different than a Portland fire game, although I will say that Governor Tina Kotek was in attendance. When she addressed the crowd, she mentioned it would be nice to have those stacks that spew fire at the end like they have for the starting lineup for the Portland Fire. But alas, the team nor actual fire were present at the event. But there were about 750 business and political leaders and nonprofit leaders from not just Portland, but from the whole area. We heard from the governor. We also heard from other elected officials, including Portland Mayor Keith Wilson and Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson, and also from leaders of nonprofits and of sports teams.
And what was the audience like? I think I read in your story people paid quite a bit of money to attend this event?
Yeah, a lot of folks did. They paid about $350 per ticket to attend. There was also, of course, a bunch of media, and the Chamber of Commerce has guests that they invite. But for the average person in the business community, $350 to get in.
Wow. Okay, so lots of reporters, all of us, have covered or attended Chamber of Commerce events. Usually they're in convention centers or sort of a hotel meeting room or ballroom type situation. Why the Moda Center?
Yeah, I have been through so many hotel ballrooms. I've done the whole tour. And in fact, that's normally where the Portland Metro Chamber events take place. But the chamber had a clear message this year that public money should go towards maintaining and renovating the Moda Center. And so that's why they held the event there. Everyone who spoke appeared in favor of using tax dollars for the arena. And that argument is that by renovating the Moda Center, it will help keep the city's NBA team, or as I like to call it, the MNBA. But it will help keep the Blazers here in Portland. And leaders say that having a professional team of that caliber does help create jobs, and it encourages spending in the local economy. And that's not just at the Moda Center, but at bars and restaurants and hotels and other businesses in the area.
Okay, great. Thank you for that good table setter. We're going to come back to you, Kyra, in a bit. But Alex, turning to you, we have known that this week was going to be a big one for Moda Center for a while. Can you just quickly remind us how we got here?
Yeah, let me try to give you the Spark Notes. Are Spark Notes still a thing? Anyways, Portland owns the Moda Center and leases to the Blazers. And that lease is coming up for renewal in a few years. And that process has been expedited a bit after the Blazers sold to a new owner, Tom Dundon, and a few affiliates. And that group has pushed hard for immediate renovations for the arena as part of the lease renewal. And those renovations, they want those renovations to be entirely paid for with public dollars, which was kind of the theme of this event Kyra was talking about. This all came with an unstated but kind of vaguely implied threat that Dundon could relocate the Blazers to another city if this didn't happen. So high stakes. And then earlier this year, the state pledged to take out $365 million in bonds to pay for arena renovations, as long as the Blazers commit to a 20-year lease and an agreement to not leave town. That agreement also relies on the city and Multnomah County ponying up some money. Mayor Keith Wilson and County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson pledged $120 million and $88 million, respectively, from public funds. Now we're on this fast-track timeline to get the revenue plan and lease negotiations wrapped up by the end of the year, which is needed to access state bonds. At the city level, which is what I'm the most familiar with, there's two big questions. One is where this money will come from. We just went through a bruising budget season featuring a lot of cuts. There isn't really any extra cash floating around the city, nor is there interest in a new tax to create revenue for this renovations. The mayor suggested using revenue from an existing tax meant for climate resiliency projects, but that's a non-starter for a lot of people. And the second question is, at the city, is what this agreement will give the city beyond just a promise to keep the Blazers playing in Portland. There's talk about promises to let Moda staff unionize, to keep food prices low, to help redevelop the area around the Moda Center. So the goal is to get these two big questions answered by mid-August to meet the December lease deadline.
And what has the Portland City Council's reaction been like this week?
Leading up to this week, it's one of those unique issues that hasn't totally divided Portland City Council, which is usually kind of the theme. We have this sick, the whole recent budget session was just like these very strict divisions across council. But this one has progressives and moderates on council really questioning the benefits and strategy of the deal kind of in lockstep. That said, most of the skepticism has come from the more progressive councilors, particularly around the premise that the city is essentially being blackmailed by Dundon into paying for this arena with the threat that he'll take our beloved NBA team away if we don't. There's also particular concern around using climate tax money on remodeling an arena, but that's coming from folks across the council's narrow political aisle. I think the biggest issue for councilors in general as we lead up to this conversation, this decision, is a feeling that they've been kept in the dark around these negotiations. They feel like they and the public don't have the information they need to make any kind of a smart decision.
Yeah, it's been moving very quickly, I think you mentioned, and city councilors have mentioned as well.
Sure.
So we know not everyone is pleased. Mayor Keith Wilson is very aware of this fact as well. He started this week on Tuesday with a letter that pretty directly called out nearly half of the city council.
Yeah, it's a strange balance right now because Wilson essentially promised this big funding commitment at the state legislature without being granted much time to sit down and talk to councilors about it. And now councilors are the ones that are going to have to approve the final funding package. So he's really been urging councilors to get behind him and tone down on the critiques that they have and the criticism that they're been posting on social media and newsletters. So yeah, on Tuesday, Wilson sent out this public letter where he's essentially just scolded councilors who had been skeptical of the deal, who post stuff on their Instagrams and other social media platforms, calling it kind of a re-election campaign stunt that puts the future of economic vitality of Portland at risk. He also went after a Blazers fan who lives in New York who created a website that questions and interrogates kind of the details of the Moda deal and pushes for more transparency. I will say Wilson has been pretty weak on explaining why this is important to Portland's economy beyond just kind of the platitudes about how it's key to the city's, vibrancy and longevity. The pitch to convince the public that this is worth the investment, at least from the city, has been pretty shallow. And that wasn't in his letter. He was just kind of upset that there was pushback, but we didn't really see an argument there. But what his letter may have lacked in substance, it made up for in emotion. I can't remember Wilson sharing something so strongly worded since Trump threatened to send the National Guard to Portland. He's mad that councilors are poking the bear a little bit, which in this situation is Dundon. Of course, the councilors that he was addressing, those making Instagram posts questioning the deal, they responded swiftly to this letter. They weren't happy. Here's a snippet from Councilor Tiffany Koyama-Lane. She's a former elementary school teacher who essentially made an anti-bullying PSA about this letter. First, she pointed out how Wilson called the guy behind the website I mentioned earlier a, quote, Brooklyn tech bro. Here she is.
The teacher and me can't stay quiet about this one because politics doesn't have to be this way. We can have fierce disagreements. We can debate important issues. We can challenge one another's ideas, but let's not normalize name calling. Let's not normalize punching down. And let's not normalize using positions of power to belittle members of the public.
So that's one response. Others called him out kind of directly at this public meeting on Wednesday. So it didn't land great.
Yeah, that sounds a little bit contentious. Was the name calling the tech bro?
Yeah.
Is that what you were?
Yeah.
Okay, that's so We also heard similar response from counselors and others at a rally outside of the arena before the Metro Chamber meeting yesterday. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I stopped by before heading inside for the Portland Metro Chamber's annual meeting. There was probably about a few dozen demonstrators that were outside the Moda Center. And, Lauren, they were like right where cars were turning into the parking garage to get to Moda. And they were really targeting people that were attending the event. And they had a message both for Blazers owner Tom Dundon and for Portland leaders. They wanted no tax dollars for the Moda Center.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, billionaire bailouts got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, billionaire bailouts got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, billionaire bailouts got to go.
Instead, protesters said that Dundon should pay for the arena renovations and that the city should put tax dollars towards things like education and housing. The protest outside was organized by Portland's chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America, and it did include 3 city councilors that identify as Democratic Socialists. Alex already mentioned Tiffany Koyama Lane, Angelita Murillo, and Mitch Green. They all spoke at the rally, and so did Alicia Chavez, the incoming president of the Portland Teachers Association.
Okay, we will discuss the reaction to some of these comments when we come back, but we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk more about the Moda Center. All right, back inside the Moda Center. Kyra, what did you hear from the business leaders inside, and did Dundon speak? And I'm guessing it was a slightly different message than what you heard outside of the protest.
Yeah, it was actually the complete opposite from what I heard outside. So Dundon did speak to the crowd and basically said that his ownership group is paying a lot of taxes and fees to operate in Portland. Dundon's argument is that in exchange, public dollars should go towards Moda Center renovations so the team can keep generating tax revenue for the city.
I think everybody can characterize things however they want. I don't see it the same way, but I'm not trying to get people to agree or disagree with me. I just know it feels like we're making a pretty big investment by staying here and paying these tax rates and agreeing to these fees for dollars that go back into the building.
Other leaders also talked about the importance of the Trailblazers and of having a working arena in the city. We also heard from Albina Vision Trust Executive Director Winta Johannes, and she told the crowd that one building doesn't make a vibrant district, the people in it do. But she also said that having a working arena helps provide opportunities for the community as long as it's maintained with respect to the people living in the area every day.
And to be clear, Dundon hasn't clearly ever threatened that he's going to move. He's just sort of like implied it through these sort of statements. If the Moda Center isn't renovated, he has options. Is that right?
That is my sense, at least. If he has said anything more concrete than that, I have not heard it. Instead, he's basically just maintained that he's spending a bunch of money already to basically buy the Blazers, and that's all he's going to do.
It's a lot of kind of reading in between the lines, I'd say, for politicians and folks who are worried about it. And there were some emails, I think, from representatives from the Blazers sent to elected officials earlier this year that like kind of pointed to how in other cities public money has gone to arena renovations when a new owner comes in, and how this is kind of like, this is what happens. And if it doesn't, things could be rough. Mm-hmm. Like just kind of, nodding towards it, but it hasn't explicitly been said anywhere.
Right. Okay, well, what were some other takeaways, Kyra, from inside the Moda Center yesterday?
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit more about what the interaction between the leader of the Portland Metro Chamber, Andrew Hone, and Dundon was like. Dundon was really only there for like 20 minutes. He joined Hone on stage. Hone interviewed him. Dundon was a man of few words. He seemed almost indifferent, like he was there to make the case for public money, but basically Dundon just said he's not going to put forward any more of his own funds. Meanwhile, Hone spoke as if he was convincing Dundon to keep the Blazers here. And, in a way, he probably was.
And so I just want to say to you how much it means to us, this place this team, and this facility. And I just want to say thank you for investing in our city. Thank you for stepping up into the ownership spot and for bringing the ownership and investment group with us here today. And we wish you and your team nothing but success, because your success, this team's success, this means the world to everybody in this room.
Okay, first of all, that's kind of a bold statement from Hone. Everyone in this room, there were protesters that were in the audience, so I'm not sure that was exactly true. But, that tone really stood out to me, and it was just a deep contrast from what we heard from critics. And instead, Hone was really presenting himself as buddy-buddy with Dundon and as somebody that really wants to see the team stay here and wants to see tax dollars go towards the arena.
Which is kind of a similar, messaging that we've seen from Governor Tina Kotek and Portland Mayor Keith Wilson. And that seems to be sort of working, because didn't Dundon point out yesterday that, I like your governor,
yes.
I like your mayor. So to some degree, it seems to be working.
Yes.
Alex, you had a marathon afternoon, and that continued back at City Hall, where councilors were holding a work session to discuss this public financing plan. What were some takeaways from that?
Yeah, so this work session was the first public meeting, essentially, where councilors were talking about what they wanted out of this lease deal. So a lot of questions and concerns. A lot of the same stuff that's been aired earlier that I kind of mentioned, where their worries lie. But a few takeaways. The biggest is that councilors, as they have been up until now, are still pretty peeved by the lack of information they've received on what the city would be paying for under this deal. Here's how Councilor Samir Kanal put it.
Councilors need more information. I think it's frankly astonishing that we've been talking about a potential renovation for more than 6 months and still haven't received the detailed list of what the city's money would pay for. And I want to be clear, I do not want renderings. I do not want narratives. I want numbers and I want spreadsheets. That's it.
Councilors also talked about what they wanted to see in a deal with the Blazers beyond just a guarantee that the team would stick around. A top request was for the team to make some kind of financial contribution to the renovations alongside Portland, which I guess is pretty common in other arena deals. But as you heard from Kyra, it seems like a dead end for Dundon. This meeting happened a day after another similar meeting with Multnomah County commissioners. The county, for their part, has promised to pitch in around $88 million to the arena renovations. But county commissioners have a lot of the same issues with this proposal that the city does. At that meeting, a number of councilors pushed for more details on what the money would pay for exactly. One thing that's looming over all of these talks is that the city and the county both went through this really rough budget season where they had to take some deep, difficult cuts to basic programs, public safety, homeless programs, et cetera. So politicians in both governments have questioned why they should prioritize renovating this aging arena over those core services that were cut. Here's how County Commissioner Megan Moyer put it on Tuesday.
I am being asked, and as is everyone here, to inflict a continued loss of service on people who are the most economically insecure, to take from them, to give to a group of individuals who bought this team, who don't seem to have a love for us. We'd love to build that relationship. We'd love them to love us like we love their team. It feels like extortion.
So yeah, no one's feeling super great about this, and they want answers.
Okay, well, what's next?
Yeah, so the city will continue to hold, and the county will continue to hold these public meetings on what it wants to get out of the deal, and maybe it'll get a few answers about, more information and what it will go towards, and where the money will come from. That's still a really big question mark. But there's a deadline quickly approaching. For the city, that's August 12th, when City Council is set to vote on what's called a term sheet, basically the guiding document for negotiations with the Blazers, which will include details on what money the city will be using to pay for this. The county has a pretty similar time frame, and all of this needs to be wrapped up and finalized by the end of the year. And frankly, I don't know how they're going to land that plane.
Kyra, has the Portland Fire weighed into this discussion at all? Just curious.
What a great question. Not really. I will say that I think that they want to continue playing in the Moda Center for as long as they can.
All right. Well, Kyra and Alex, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. This week's episode of OPB Politics Now was recorded in the Gert Boyle studio. It was produced by Andrew Thien. Our audio engineers are Nalene Silva and Stephen Cray. Our music comes from Audio Network. We'll be back next week with more political news from across the Pacific Northwest. Until then, you can find all of OPB's reporting at opb.org. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.